welcome to our 6-month report presentations on council funded agencies, and we have half our slots for each agency. And first up this morning is Safer Canterbury. Welcome Kevin and Don. We've got attachments in the folder, so there's 4 different attachments that we've been sent through, and I guess what we'll do is we'll go to you, Kevin and Don, first, and let you go through a few things, and then we'll take questions afterwards, if that's okay. So I'll just get you to turn your light on when you're speaking, and it has been recorded and live streamed.
That's obviously working. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to come here today to present our 6-month report and talk to our business plan for the next financial year. Thank you, councillors and Deputy Mayor and staff. It's been a very busy 6 months for our organisation, both due to the operating services in this current environment and due to the continued growth of our organisation. Looking at the key outcomes within our agreement with Council, the first is to establish a sound return on investment by leveraging council funding to obtain central government funding. Over the past 6-month period, we've received $1,117,000 excluding GST and income, an increase on the same period last year where income was $811,000. So this represents an increase of around $300,000 for the previous 6 months as opposed to the year before. Council's contribution over this time has risen by 9%. If people remember, we did in our 10-year plan ask for an increase of funding to maintain our structure and a healthy organisation as we went through growth. But over this period, the increase in funding from central government has risen by 37%. Which does show that we not only maintain a sound return on council's investment, but are increasing it significantly. This is all money that we bring into the district from central government that we use to employ additional staff, so it also has an economic benefit to the community. A portion of this income relates directly to the delivery of the refugee services. Although we have held this contract for some time, it's only been in the last 6 months that we've been able to fully bring in refugees into this community. So this has meant that the funding for this contract has been fully realised. In addition, new funding was provided to deliver new contracts. We received funding from Waitaha PHO by way of the CDHB to employ health navigators to support refugees. This is an independent contract to the MB contract to settle refugees. This contract is for the employment of 2 staff. The second new contract was a service known as the Community Connector. An odd name because we've got 3 or 4 contracts in town that different providers have called Community Connector. But this in particular was funded by the Ministry of Social Development and was to employ a staff member to support people in the community affected by COVID. Whilst not in the previous period, we're discussing, it's worth just mentioning that MSD have just doubled the contract value, allowing us to increase staffing, and the goal of that is to have a couple of staff that can directly support people who are self-isolating. We've also had 2 contracts extended. The attendance service, which deals with young people returning from school, was doubled to allow increased hours. This was actually one of our smallest contracts that we held and allowed us to employ an attendance worker 16 hours a week, so didn't allow for a lot of work. The increase in funding has allowed us to increase the hours of our attendance worker to 36 hours. The extra funding has allowed us to accept more referrals, increasing from 44 this time last year to 73 in the previous 6 months. This service does, of course, operate in a different climate, and it's hard to say how COVID has affected students. However, it has been hard for some learners to re-engage back into school after lockdowns, so we believe this has a lot to do with the increase in referrals. The second contract was the extension of our restorative justice contract. We'd previously been providing restorative justice services to the Ashburton Court for the last 22 years. However, we have now picked up the delivery of this for the Timaru courts and the Oamaru court. Holding a contract for one small district court is not very lucrative, and in fact there have been years when we've run at a loss. Holding the contract for the 3 courts provides enough work that it is now a worthwhile contract to hold, and any profit generated from the Timaru and Oamaru courts comes back into our district to be spent locally. It is also very hard to maintain qualified staffing for one small court, as this isn't court. It's hard to make it a full-time position for the amount of work. So holding the contract across all the courts has allowed us to increase staffing and thus cover gaps in any of the courts at any time. Safer Mid Canterbury now employs 32 staff and has 45 regular service volunteers that are engaged weekly helping deliver services. Our services have remained busy while referrals continue to come in, and we've continued to see need in the community. One area that has been difficult, of course, is the various workshops, training, events we would normally hold have not been able to be run, but staff are good at finding new ways to engage clients and the community using technology. The only downside with this is where we have clients or vulnerable clients that don't have access to technology, which can make it quite difficult. We are a face-to-face service provider, so naturally working in this environment has many challenges. Of particular note over the last 6 months has been the Refugee Settlement Service. Our district has been a settlement location since March of 2020, but it's only been in the last 6 months that refugees have been moving into our district. As it currently sits, 26 refugees are now living in Ashburton, and by all accounts are settling well. It's obviously been difficult trying to settle new people into the district over COVID, and it's been especially difficult for our Afghan refugees with the current crisis that is taking place in Afghanistan. All our families have family back in Afghanistan, and as you can imagine, would be a particularly worrying time for them with such uncertainty and unrest for their family. Over this period, we've also been busy recruiting new staff. Whilst we were waiting for the refugees to arrive, we maintained readiness with 1 staff member. However, once refugees began to arrive, we've had to build this service up to its full complement of 5 positions. Alongside this work, we're also awarded a new contract to employ 2 bilingual cultural health navigators to support refugee settlement through the CDHP, as mentioned. We've employed 1 staff member so far in this role and are currently looking for a second. And we've previously mentioned the Community Connector contract through MSD to support people affected by COVID. This has not been overly busy in its first 6 months, but it's becoming progressively busier now with supporting people who are needing to isolate. We have ever received 16 referrals in the first 6 months to that new service in our community of families looking for support. In the last financial year, we had carried out a comprehensive assessment of our capability and capacity led by Sheffield Associates. They made a number of recommendations which our organisation has been working on. In the previous financial year, we completed 2 of these, a restructure of our organisation to ensure better oversight and support to staff, and a review and rewrite of our trust deed and governance board. Over the past 6 months, we've worked on another key recommendation in the report, a complete review and rewrite of our policies and procedures. This has been a big piece of work over the last 6 months, and in December we had our first final full draft. Over the next few months we will operationalise these new policies and procedures. We've also been working on a revamp of our website, as it was identified that the platform, functionality and content had been outdated. So this has been reviewed and updated. The new website will be going live soon, and it has, as it gets put onto its new platform. The only key recommendation left for us to work on over the coming months is a review and rewrite of our organisational strategic plan. And once we've done that, we would have completed everything that had been identified to enhance and build our capability and capacity as an organisation. Now, continued growth and increase in work has led to our office reaching its capacity. We've been looking for solutions to this over the long term. However, over the short term, we've needed to find additional space elsewhere to accommodate staff. While we can still fit and operate from our current offices, we're a bit too cramped in to meet our COVID protocols. Thus the need for additional space. We will work with Community House over the coming months to discuss options to address our space requirements. Aside from that, it's been a very busy time and has seemed to have flown by. Every day seems to be filled with challenges around how we need to continue to operate so we continue to support our community. There doesn't seem to be a week go by where we're not re-looking at our COVID policies and changing how staff need to operate or function with clients. We've also prepared a business plan that we've presented to Council for the coming financial year. The request for funding is in line with the 10-year plan and represents a very much business as usual plan proposing to maintain current services provision in our community. Whilst it's very much a business as usual proposal, we don't expect the year will pan out to be business as usual. The past 2 years are anything to go by. So for this reason, we've not set ourselves any significant or lofty goals to achieve, aside from ensuring we deliver good quality services over that time. In saying this, we'll be working on our space requirements and ensure we have a plan moving forward to address any issues we have in this area. We would also like to mention that when we tendered for the Refugee Resettlement service, we came in part way through a contractual period, so we were awarded a contract that had a term of 2 years and 5 months, as this was the case for all new settlement locations around the country. As such, our contract comes to an end at the 30th of June 2022. We've just been through the process of re-tendering for this contract, the tender closing on Monday, so we will now await the outcome of that tender. We do have some confidence in our ability to again be awarded the contract based on past performance and feedback from MB. If awarded the contract again, it will be for a term of 6 years with a right of renewal for additional 3. With border controls being relaxed, we believe we will start to see the full complement of refugees settling in Ashburton over the coming financial year, so it will be a very busy service. We could perhaps see up to 80 or 90 refugees resettle in our district. But of course, who knows what might happen within the world that could influence that either way. It's very hard to know what services will be required in regard to COVID and what this might look like for the coming financial year. Our Ministry of Social Development contracts to provide COVID response workers, community connectors, has been contracted through to the 30th of June 2023 at this stage. So obviously MSD expects that there will be continued need within our community. For the year moving forward, we're currently budgeting for an annual income of around 2.6 to 2.7 million. But who knows if services will increase or decrease. Each time we think we've reached our growth peak as an organisation, a ministry or someone offers us a new contract for something we hadn't anticipated. So it's somewhat uncertain what our organisational services will look like in the coming year. But we don't anticipate any significant changes to our core services. So happy to take any questions around our work or what we're planning on doing, or I'm not sure if Don wants to say a few words.
Don, do you want to add anything? Just turn your light on if you do.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora tātou. I don't want to say too much because I don't do the work here. The person on my left and the lady behind me are instrumental in the success of this organisation. Just a couple of things, if I may. Firstly, financially, I think we are in a healthy position. Bear in mind that we are not a profit-making organisation as such, but we do have to amass funds that we don't spend. Sometimes we have to give money back if it isn't spent, and sometimes we are told we can hang on to some money because developments are still to come. The refugees service would be a good case in point. The board has been very active. We have changed the trust deed for the organisation because it was, I think, dated back to the 1990s when this organisation was set up, and we needed to get ourselves up to date. It has been a challenging year for Kevin and the staff. COVID obviously has affected everybody. We will probably lose some staff, some good staff, in fact, who have difficulty with the COVID situation, and that's one we are managing as we go. Refugees, obviously, Kevin's pointed out, are another situation that will grow and develop, and we will cross bridges when we come to them. I do want to reinforce Kevin's point about this organisation probably can't keep expanding every year. So while Council has asked us to show a return on your investment, I just sound a note of warning that I don't think that can go on forever. We have expanded beyond my expectations in the last few years. We're managing what we're doing, but at some point there has to be a limit. The end of that must come at some point. However, having said that, we keep doing all sorts of extraordinary things. We keep employing staff who are fantastic operators, and finally from me I just want to say that I do believe the success of this organisation is largely due to the people who run it, and in particular to the man on my left, and I am fortunate in being the chairperson of a trustee board that actually doesn't have major problems in operating because other people do such a good job. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Don. We'll go to questions now. Does anyone have any questions? And if you do have a question on particular we've got 4 reports sitting there, so just let us know which page you're on and which reports you're looking at. Might be handy. Lane.
Thank you, Madam.
I'd like to go first.
Kevin, just a question. You mentioned about the contract with the courts, what you had here for a start, and now you've got Omro and Timaru, if I understand it. How can you make money now when you couldn't do it with it only with the local one? Are they getting more money, or is it just the structure?
The contract itself, well, I suppose Timaru is a more lucrative court. Most bluntly, it gets more work through it, and so the more work, the more money you can make off it.
Yeah.
You have to invest a certain amount in staffing, and you only get paid for the work that comes through. And you invest the same amount in staffing in Ashburton as you do in Timaru, but more work comes through Timaru, so it just has a better return, basically. And then with Oamaru again, it just increases our return again, because we haven't had to invest in running 3 separate structures. We just have one structure for the 3 courts. The provider in Timaru and the provider in Oamaru both had pulled out and didn't want to do it because they weren't that lucrative, having to maintain a whole structure.
So your overheads are lower.
Sorry?
Your overheads are basically the same for the 3 together now.
Yes,
so your cost is lower. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Stuart.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Morning, Kevin and Don. Are we discussing the next year's budget, or are we going to do that under a separate heading?
I'm happy to take any question about anything, so I'll leave it up to the chair.
I see next year's budget you want 243,000, which would an increase of 37% on the 176 you got this year. This year you got a special 35,000 for accreditation. To me, that's exorbitant when you want 37% increase when inflation is up a bit, I know, but council is struggling to keep our rate increases down. I think that's a bit optimistic, isn't it?
I'm not quite sure what your question is, but I'd worked it out at a 4.7% increase.
In the 22-23 budget, you've got council credit for 243,054.
Which page are you looking on, Stuart? Page 4
of the annual business plan budget for next year.
Page 4 of that business plan.
So in the last financial year, we had operational funding and we had funding for the Safe Communities project. Again, we're asking for operational funding and for the Safe Communities project. When you take those two figures from the current financial year and the new financial year, the increase is about 4.7%.
If you go to page...
If you leave the 35,000 out, then it's different.
Go to page 3 on your 6-monthly report, on the bottom of the page. You've got council contribution. Isn't it somewhere?
It says staff, management and admin granted 176,806. Is that where you're looking, Stuart?
Yeah,
so that's the bottom of page 2.
Somewhere I had our grant this year, plus we gave them extra funding of 35,000.
So the 35,000 is for Safe Communities, so that's, Leslie will be presenting on that next, so that's separate to Safe and Mid Canterbury.
So our request does include the Safe Community funding. So it's the operational funding for our organisation and the Safe Community funding.
Okay.
So that's what we've always put them collectively. So the financing for that project sits under our organisation.
Kevin, can you just tell us which document your funding request is noted?
So
we've got 4 documents. We've got the snapshot, we've got the 6-month report, we've got the 6-month financials, and then we have the annual business plan.
So the snapshot is actually a report that Leslie will be talking to, not part of our organisation.
Yep. Okay, so we'll leave that one out.
Yeah, that's something that she does.
So the funding request is
So the funding request is in the annual business plan document on page 4. So that just outlines the request for the year. So, and we've taken that directly from what was in the 10-year plan request.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Carolyn, you've got a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick sort of chat, really. Congratulations. I think you guys do a tremendous amount of work for our community, and I think you do it really well. I'm a little bit worried by a comment you made, Don, that you can't continue to expand. So that implies to me we can't continue to offer services to people that may need them or take advantage of contracts that may become available, e.g. the refugees. I mean, that's an example of one that we have taken advantage of. What do you see as the future for that space then? How are we going to make sure that our community can, that we can support our community, whatever may come? And what do you see happening in that area?
Perhaps if I can make a couple of comments first and then Kevin can say whatever, but we've already indicated that the building is difficult to house the number of staff and the equipment and the things that those people have to do. If the number of refugees increase, for example, there will be further staffing around that. So I think the first and probably the most pressing need is the physical premises that we operate from. And Kevin's indicated we are talking to Community House Board about that. We've also had some other discussions elsewhere, nothing concrete at all, but maybe the time has come for us to have a look at purpose-built premises, I don't know. So that's the first thing, physical space. I guess the second thing is there's a limit to the number of qualified people that you can employ for some of the specific jobs we've got. So we haven't found it easy, for example, to find liaison people for the refugees because you need them to be speakers of a particular language, familiar with a particular culture, and to be able to base themselves in Ashburton. So I guess what I'm indicating is that there may come a point where the physical location we're in or the needs of the community are such that we have to look for some other way of meeting them, or we have to say, sorry, we can't actually do this. We haven't got to that point, and this guy's incredibly adaptable. But if you look at where we started 20 whatever years ago, the number of people we were employing has trebled, more than trebled probably. So I'm just saying there may have to be alternative solutions looked at in due course.
Yes.
It's not urgent, but it could happen.
Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to. I wouldn't say anything different to Don, but I presume if somebody offers a contract, we'd take it and make it work because we just make stuff work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, you do, and that's great. But I think as a council and as we're representative of our community, we want to make sure that the needs of our community are met and all people in our community. So, you know, and then we meet with you guys regularly. So any heads up that you're not meant, I mean, sourcing adequately trained staff is a problem everywhere in town for every area of business. But as long as we get a heads up that there are some pressure points or something needs to support so that we can step in and help, because I think, I think you make a tremendous contribution to our town.
I think we would certainly do that, and I didn't mean to be alarmist here. I'm just pointing out that this organisation is growing. I, for one, am getting older. I'm nearly as old as some of the people around your table. Some of, I should say. So, yeah, we will certainly be in close contact with council if and as things change.
Thank you, Neil.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for the work you do for the district. It is much appreciated. I've got two questions, and one might be for Leslie perhaps later, but I'm not going to be here when she presents. But I was just looking through the figures on ACC and road crashes, whatever they're determined and narrowed down to mid-Canterbury. But you get to suicides, and it's Canterbury-wide. Can that be narrowed down to Ashburton District, so we know what our, let's call it a problem, but whatever it is. But I'll hold that question for later, but if it's a Leslie question. So that's one question. Can that be mid-Canterbury specific, what those numbers are? But the other question is just on your budget, the refugee resettlement. I don't see a line in there for that, or am I missing it?
Within the budget.
I'm on page 20. 20.
So, I mean, within our budget, it's just overall costs, so we don't pull out any specific project. Are you looking for a specific budget around the refugees, or?
Well, I see all the others are specific. You've got Minister of Social Development, you've got Restorative Justice, Tauranga, Tamariki, etc., etc. You don't have an income line for refugees, resettlements.
Well, there's the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. There's an income line, and they fund the Refugee Settlement Service.
Oh, that's where it is?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So that's where the contract comes from.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Lynette.
I was just going back to the refugees. Neil really asked my question, but you get funding for them for 2 years per family, or are they on the books for as long as they have to settle into the community? Because I was wondering who picks up the tab after the official funding stops. Is it the local community, or is the money coming from MB?
So the service from MB is a 12-month resettlement service.
Per family.
The contract says that we can work for them for up to 2 years, and that's just so if somebody still needs support, you don't go, oh, 12 months is up, sorry. They've also identified around the country that many refugees who can already speak the language, get a job and a car and those sorts of things quickly, tend not to look for support, so they can drop off early, so you sort of get that continuum. Once the service is finished, there does need to be a cut-off because it's only funded to settle people. We do have funding from the Ministry of Social Development for a post-refugee settlement service, so we have one staff member, And so MSD are funding that as in, once people have settled, if they still have small ongoing needs or need navigational support. So that sits there. But the Ministry of Business is very clear that refugees are residents of New Zealand and they have entitled to every single service that every provider provides. So the settlement services just especially settle them, and once they're settled, if they still have ongoing needs, to utilise other services that just exist in the community for everyone. It's early days yet, so we can't say what people's needs will be after the 24-month period. But once people are engaged in employment and those sorts of things, I think we'll find that they just work away happily and probably don't have too much need.
Thank you. John?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, gents, for the work that you're doing. Got 3 or 4 questions. First one is, maybe you can put a rumour going around town to bed that the new refugees that are coming in are of a different Muslim faith than what the other locals are, and therefore they're having to be transported through to Christchurch to carry out their religious functions. Is that true or false?
Yes, they're of a different faith than the mosque that's here. Just like Christianity, there's a few different faiths. And so their particular faith, they organise their own prayer groups and are going around each other's houses, and then for special religious occasions, they're going to Christchurch to a mosque that represents their religion.
So they're not going
regularly all
every
the time.
Friday for Friday prayers type thing?
My understanding is that they're organising their own prayer groups and they're moving around each other's houses, and they're looking for a location currently as they grow to have their basically a location to run their mosque or church or prayer sessions. And so the advice I have is they are only going to Christchurch for those special religious occasions.
And you're providing the transport, presumably?
We tend to use our volunteers. So we have lots of volunteers that offer the cart refugees around everywhere.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned before that you're getting government contract money and you're employing staff to do that, to do those contracts, which is great. Question I have is, are those employment contracts tied into the length of time that you're getting that government money for?
No. Legally, if our intent is to continue to apply for the contract and we have a belief that we'll continue to get it, then we don't have a fixed term contract. We have an open contract with a redundancy clause if we don't get the funding. As happens for probably every business that ever has a contract to deliver a service for a set time. They're not fixed term contracts. Fixed term contracts would make it difficult to recruit staff and maintain them.
Thank you. Just moving on to the 6-monthly financial report on page 3, I think it is, or 4, no, just looking at the balance sheet. I note that as at the end of December, you've got $1,078,000 in the bank, which must make you feel quite proud. But that is offset, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, by other current liabilities of $954,000, which I understand is grant monies that you have received and are sitting in the bank, but that is the unexpired or the unspent portion of those grant monies that you have received. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So basically, if we look at what has happened in the first 6 months, as at the end of June, the difference between your cash resources and your unexpired contracts was $169,000. As at the end of December, that had actually slipped back to $123,000. So we've gone backwards by $40,000. So is that correct? And does that concern you? And I have a follow-up question for Dawn.
As it sits, we had a lot of funding in advance that we had carried over from the last financial year. And so we've been working hard to attempt to spend that sort of thing, because as you'll see, our cash is built up. And if we don't spend it, we won't get further funding. So we've spent more money than we've had in this financial year because of money we've tried to spend from the last financial year that was carried forward. So not necessarily concerned because we still have higher reserves than we had this time last year.
So a question of Don, because your governance, how often are you getting reports on just where your grant funding is at, the unexpired portion and that sort of thing? Because, I mean, if everything fell over or someone flogged off with $1 million type of thing, you're going to be left with $1 million worth of debt type of thing. So how often are you getting reports on your grants?
We have reports.
I'll just get you to turn your light on, Don, so everyone can hear at home. Thank you.
Sorry, the board receives full financial report statements, cost centres, profit and loss every month. Every third month, I think we go through the whole 30-odd pages for every cost centre in the organisation. We don't do that every month because it takes hours and hours and hours, but we do it on 4 times a year at least. So every month we're looking at our overall situation. Every third month we're going through every cost centre in detail. So regular reporting. If it's not from Kevin, it comes from our accounts service people who have financial expertise. We don't employ staff to do the money. We employ professionals, and so I'm confident that we have sufficient information provided to us every month.
Thank you. And just a final comment, you're saying you're running out of room, and I imagine the way you are, because I know CAB are after more room, and so will the other leasee in that building. I'm just wondering, the refugee area is a growing area, and is it possible to rent separate space to run that from? Because basically that rental cost would be part of the grant money that would be built in that you're getting from MB.
One of the points that MB put in the attender document and has made clear to us was that they wanted to contract to a local organisation of some size that had a range of services that could wrap around the refugees, and they particularly didn't want the service to sit separately from other service providers. So the answer to that question is that would be outside of what the intent of the contract is, to have it housed so that refugees can have a one-stop shop service with wraparound services. So that would be problematic. We currently do fit in our current location, but we're a bit tight, and with COVID requirements, we're just using a second location at present. But lots of people expand and lots of people get new buildings or different buildings or do some renovations, and I'm sure we'll find a way forward. We just need to go through the process. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll take 2 more questions, and then I think we've given it a good go time-wise. And just another note that Councillor Cameron is the chair of the Refugee Resettlement Group. So when we have our councillor briefings, maybe we can get an update on all that as well. Stuart, I'll go to you
I've got a pretty brief question. On your next year's budget, you've got 87,000 set aside for contractors and consultancy. I thought you had a pretty big staff. Why would you need to have outside consultants?
We don't hire our own financial staff. We contract in a small company to do it. So that probably the majority of that funding, around 60,000, represents contracting the company to do it. That came about some years ago when our auditor recommended that we ran a risk having one staff member within our organisation who oversaw all the financial processes. So we found a small company that has 3 or 4 staff that reduced our risk, has an independent person they've audited, and so that's what that's for. If we employed a financial administrator or staff person to cover our books, then that would drop by 60-odd thousand or 70,000, and the wages would go up by the same amount. So that's the answer for that one.
Can I just add to that? Yes. We have some other consultancies at different times. For example, Kevin mentioned we've been revising our trust deed, we've been revising our policies and procedures. There are various stages where you need people with expertise in those areas to advise you, lawyers or people with expertise in HR, to come in and look over some of the stuff you've got to make sure that you're on the right track. We had to seek advice, for example, about mandates, can I use the word, for how we would operate with our staff under COVID, those sorts of areas. So it's not just a one-off figure, it's things happen from time to time where you need advice.
Thank you. Angus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I just make one comment, 2 questions. Don, I think the number of staff have gone up considerably. I can remember 25 years ago being on an organisation that helped fund the first one, and I think there's more than that now, so I just think you're underselling your organisation. Sorry. On page 10 of the business plan, Madam Chair, at the top, supported bail. I'm interested to know how much of council ratepayers' funds are supporting bail provisions. And the other question is, because council made at the time, through council press releases driven by the Mayor, or announced by the Mayor, the refugees coming to Ashburton was going to solve our unemployment problem. So I'm wondering how many refugees have actually entered the true workforce.
Supported bail first, 100% funded by Oranga Tamariki. Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yep. Secondly, refugees in full-time employment. We have 2 in casual employment, but at this point, none in full-time employment. The recommendation is that we work very hard over the first 6 months to support refugees with English language before supporting them to enter the workforce. And then over the second 6 months of their settlement period is to engage in meaningful employment. So that's what the contract is. MB have told us that where people enter work very quickly without the language, they are A, not necessarily the most productive employee you'll have, and B, it doesn't bode well for them to have future opportunities because they have many skills but can't realise them without the language. So, yeah, but as we move on, then there'll be a steady flow moving into employment. I would imagine we would have quite a few in employment now if it hadn't been for COVID and refugees had started arriving in March of 2020.
Okay, I was going for last question, but there's 3 more lights on, so that's all right. Short morning tea time. Diane, you've got another question?
Just a short question, but congratulations on your report. I mean, I've always said the work that comes out of that building down there is amazing. And I always think if you can helicopter over it and look at all the benefits into our community, it would be just like a great big world map. So, but congratulations. Anyway, my minor question is just around the community connector. And I can recollect back because I've been coming to meetings there for 5 years. When we started with the car, it was more around getting dairy farm people, isolated people into
It's a
town.
different, so the connector is, the Mid-Canterbury connector is a community vehicle trust, which Leslie will cover. This connector is a service provided by MSD to help people get back. It was initially to help people get back into the workforce after they'd lost their jobs due to COVID, and it's now more about managing isolation. So same word.
Thank you. You've just
Yeah.
explained, and that's exactly what I was heading to ask.
And did I explain it correctly? I hope so.
Yes, yeah, I don't know, there's 4 contracts in our community where they've used the word community connector, so it's very confusing. Leslie can certainly talk to about the transport project when she comes on.
Thank you. No, and that's what I was wanting to clarify from what its objective was initially to where it is today, presuming it's still the same vehicle, but it's under a new banner.
Yeah, we'll talk about that with Leslie because that comes under her report.
Cool.
Carolyn, have you just
So
got
just a quick comment on in response to Angus's question with regards to refugees and people working. All I can comment about is when we talk to Kathy Harrington, is that people are keen as heck to get out and seek gainful employment. So there's no reticence there whatsoever. People in our new residents are so excited to get out and contribute to the community.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thank you. No further questions, so thank you both for coming along and presenting, and congratulations on a good year and a tough year. and we'll see you again in 6 months. And we've got Leslie coming up next, so I don't know if, Kevin, you're going to stay put? Yes? Great. Thanks, Don. Appreciate that. So welcome Leslie. Leslie is the Safe Communities Coordinator, and she has got, I'll just go back and find her reports. The snapshot is part of her report, and you've got the 6-month report and the business plan. And just to note, I am the chair of the Safe Communities group. So off you go, Leslie.
Right.
Yep, there you go. Good day.
Okay. Well, thank you. Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to speak very briefly, because I don't want to impact on your tea break, about the project, the Safe Communities project, what we've been doing over the last 6 months and what are some of our plans for 22 to 23. The snapshot, I'm not going to laboriously go through that. That document is quite interesting, though. We get that information every year, and our steering group, it's one of the tools our steering group uses to say, oh, that's an interesting piece of data, maybe we should look at that. So for instance, the crime stuff for the district, there's a major percentage of that is about theft and burglary, and is an issue. So therefore we translated that into a really good campaign that we did through November, December that I can talk about. So it's one of the tools that the group uses to think about what could be some of the key safety issues and concerns for our district, and therefore what do we, if it's appropriate for our group, what can we do to turn that into something positive and tangible for the community. So thank you to Councillor Deputy Mayor Liz McMillan, and also to Diane Rawlinson for their ongoing support of the steering group. The group remains really hearty. We had a planning session at the end of January to have a look at the data and have a think about the things moving forward, and there was a big number of people turned up to that. We were really impressed with the feedback and the number of people who came along. So the last 6 months, COVID, as with everyone, COVID has had an impact on some of the programs and things that we had wanted to do. It's in the background, particularly in terms of things like community events and being able to actually get out into the community. So the Mid-Canterbury Connector community transport service has been majorly, I think, impacted by COVID. Our key client group are older people. They are not coming out. They're not coming out into the community, or if they were coming into the community, the activities that they were doing are no longer happening under red. So there's nothing for them to actually come into Ashburton for. If they're coming to a senior citizens event, all of those events under red have been cancelled. So we've got a core group from Methven who come in, of ladies from Methven. We've stopped marketing because I think at this point it's a waste of money to market a service. We're going against the tide of people, feeling that they want to stay home. We did have our AGM on the 23rd of November, and we had 2 new trustees appointed, and we are going to purchase the old Town Watch vehicle so that we've got a vehicle of our own that is a bit more accessible than the community van. The community van is a bit scary for people because of the steps, so we're getting feedback from people saying, I don't think I could get into the community van, older people. It's not the vehicle for me to want to be transported around in. So that's one that's been a bit of an issue for us over the, but we will soldier through this year and see where we go with that project. Interesting feedback, the falls in older people, which is another area where we see a lot of people in hospital in Ashburton district from falls, particularly people over 75. The strength and balance classes that run around the community are regarded as the best option for people to keep fit and keep their strength and balance up. After the lockdown in, was it July, August this year, our attendance figures dropped from 59%, so that was 59% attendance versus capacity, so virtually 60% classes full around the district, to 41.9%. And that's been a continuing trend. So again, people worried about coming out into the community, not quite sure whether the classes are going or not. One of the key questions, do I have to wear a mask when I'm exercising? No, you don't. So we did some promotion on that in November, and at the moment we're looking at possibly promoting more online access, things that people can actually do from home. But again, that's if you're technologically competent, that's fine. If you're not, you're not going to be able to access anything. We did the theft burglary campaign. I think the last time I was here, I brought the little flyers, and you were the first people to see those little flyers. We did the campaign in the Courier. We handed out flyers. We did a number of community talks. We've got a home marking kit that has gone out. There's a number of, I think there are 9 kits that are for invisible, it's like invisible ink, for neighbourhood support clusters, goes out, goes along the street, neighbour to neighbour, you have it for a day, you mark all your valuables with whatever, and that protects them from, you're able to identify them after a burglary. So those kits were purchased and they've gone out, and at the moment I think they're all out in the community, and we probably need some more. And the other one we're really pleased to develop was a partnership with Men's Shed, and Men's Shed are offering a service marking tradies tools. And that has had an incredible amount of interest on Facebook. So for $4 a tool, whether it's a trailer or a whatever, apparently at the moment police radars are being stolen left, right and centre out of cars. So that's the new item that they're marking for people. So advice from the police. So this was a partnership between Safe Communities, Neighbourhood Support, Men's Shed, police, and somebody else. Advice is you put your driver's licence number on your tools, and then if the police recover them after a burglary, the tradie can go in and say, here's my driver's licence, all these tools are mine. Because feedback from police here is they can recover stuff, but they don't know who it belongs to. And tradies can't claim them. So in December, they'd only started the service in December, they'd already done over 20 tools, and they only charge $4 a tool. So it's a very reasonable service and massive uptake on Facebook. It's been probably the biggest uptake that we've had. We've been doing some research on parenting needs, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. That was around just trying to find out once and for all what people think is really good about services in Ashburton, and possibly are there any gaps that we could be looking at. And that's been a really interesting project. Might as well talk about it now. So we had over 115 parents and 20 agencies reply to our survey. There's some really interesting stuff in there. One of the big mind openers for me was that when people were asked where do they look for information, 90% look online. And the next is friends and family, the next is medical centres, but online is the key. So we're now working with CAB to look at how we can make sure that everything about parenting that we've already got is up on the CAB website, and that we then connect up parents in the community knowing that that's there, that resource is there, and they can dial in and find out what they want to find out. We're developing a program about hazards in the home. I think I've talked to you about this one before. This is using a Safe Kids Toolkit, which is an interactive series of games that you can play with children and parents, identifying things like common poisons that you might have around the home, that toddlers, for instance, may think that dishwash tablets are a lolly, and they find some under the sink in the kitchen, and the next minute they're off to hospital. So it's about identifying hazards. Now, that program again has had to go on hold because the idea is to go round places like Plunket, classes, sessions of parents, and of course at the moment none of those are on under the red restrictions, so we're not able to run that program. We did our very first Motorcycle Awareness Month promotion of the Ride Forever program in October and want to do something like that again. And the Caring for Communities group ceased its function as a formal council COVID-19 welfare group in November, and that was reported through to the council. And that group is going to meet probably about March, April, and have a think about, is there a new future for them, or do we just wrap that up and leave it as is? There are some big too hard basket stuff in that mix, things like social and emergency housing, lack of counselling services, some of the real biggies for this community came out as part of that. So it's like, is there an ability to address that, or is it something that we just leave at this point in time? We were majorly impacted by things such as the AMP show, going to a non-spectator event, and we hooked our wagon for the Safety Village to Children's Day, kindly supported by Councillor Rawlinson, and that's gone to the wall as well. So I think we're going to be looking at a lot more online promotion and maybe some more smaller pop-up things that are appropriate as in terms of what's happening in the community at the moment. So new stuff for the oncoming year. Actioning the parent research will be quite a big project, and there's a large number of agencies involved in that project. We're looking at developing a ski safety program for schools. Interestingly, our district ACC data, ski injury is the top sports injury for kids 5 to 14, and in most other areas it's rugby, but for us it's ski. So we're looking at potentially partnering up with I think there are 7 ski fields in Selwyn, and working with them on some sort of developing a campaign for schools. There's another group of us looking at scams. Scams are of increasing concern, and one of the really good partnerships, close warm partnerships that we've developed over the last 6 months has been with the police here, particularly Senior Sergeant Jenkins, and this one will be our police neighbourhood support. Who else is going to be on this one? There's a large number of agencies going to sit down soon and have a bit of a chat about what scams are out there. How do we let people know about them, particularly older people? CAB are on this project as well, because people, I think, need somewhere to call, particularly older people who might not have any family, to say, look, someone's rung me about this, you know, my bank, blah, 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 is this a scam or not? Because people don't know. Older people often don't know. And that's something that the police have mentioned as well as being an issue. So we're going to have a look at what we can do around a campaign about that. Another one that keeps coming up, which I have spoken with Simon Worthington about a little bit, is workplace wellbeing, and feedback we're getting from people like CAB that they're reporting a lot of people not being offered correct working conditions, and they're ringing up CAB trying to find out what their rights are, and a lot of people feeling that they're being very much pushed because there's not enough staff, so they're having to work extra shifts and they're all exhausted. And so there's something there that could be a potential project that we could work on collaboratively with the business sector. The group that met at the end of January to do our planning workshop were very concerned about the drowning stats over the summer, and we looked at, like, what could we do? So I think there's a potential promotion of national water safety messages, getting behind Water Safety New Zealand next summer campaign and really making sure our community hear about that. And the other one that we're keen to work on with the Road Safety Committee is a campaign on road crashes due to alcohol impairment. So that's the major cause of crashes in our district, is alcohol and drug impaired people crashing, and it's the 20 to 29-year-olds, and I would presume it's going to be males, but I didn't put that in. So that's a project that we're very keen to develop some kind of a campaign on, and that would be the Road Safety Committee, ACADS, Fire and Emergency, and Safe Communities and ACC working together on that one. So you can sort of see as I'm talking, the huge proliferation of networks of all these different groups that are, here's our group here, our steering group with about 27 people on it. Underneath this big proliferation of people all working collaboratively to try and get a good outcome for the community in different areas. And it provides an opportunity for people to hook in at that level because there's something in it for their agency, or they have an interest when they're not interested in being part of the governance structure. So I think that's something that's quite pleasing. At the end of, where are we up to, year 3 of this project, that we've got that now major network of agencies working together. And we couldn't do it without the funding from the council. It's to have a little bit of PIN money to be able to launch some of these projects is absolutely needed, because most of the other agencies that we're working with have no budget at all to do anything. So if I'm able to put a couple of $1,000s into a newspaper campaign, or it really is the carrot that gets something moving, gets something off the ground. So thank you for your support for the project, both financial and otherwise. And does anyone have any questions? Have I done 15 minutes yet?
You've done very, very well. Thank you, Leslie. And I agree. I mean, the amount of hours that I think you're employed for, and the amount of work that you do, and getting all these other agencies on board has been great to watch, and it's so good to see so many projects and what's happening. But we'll go to Carolyn first.
Just a quick question, Leslie. Amazing amount of work that you get through. My question is, when you look at non-accidental injuries in kids, accidental injuries in kids, but non-intentional, there's 2,000 or something of them, 2,100 or whatever you have in your report, and only 127 are ski injuries, and that's the most common. There must be a heck of a lot of little weird sort of things.
The 127, they were the sports-related injuries, so I got them to pull out what were the key sports injuries that, there would be potential to work with netball or...
So there's no other big groups in there, like burning...
It's all trips and falls and, the stuff that kids do, but do be aware, as the ACC liaison person keeps pointing out to our group, if it gets reported through ACC, it is a serious injury, but... cuts and scrapes, parents won't be taking the time to put a report in, a claim to ACC, but it's trips, falls, bruises,
everything.
Playground, falling off your scooter.
Thank you. Lynette.
I'm just looking at your connector vehicle. There's not a great uptake with it, but I'm just sort of wondering whether you're better to put this back on the local communities and start talking to the likes of Rural Women, and you've got the Women's Institute and the Lions out in these districts. They know their community, or if they don't, then they could take this up, especially like Rural Women, to find out the needs of some of these older people and be able to take them. They're probably only too willing, as part of their duty to their community, to take these people to events or their doctor's appointments and stuff. It's probably a big untapped thing out there, and that will take a workload off having to find a vehicle and ratepayers paying for that, and ultimately let's go back to the communities to start looking after their own communities. And get that community feel back again, because we kind of drifted away and looking at agencies to, start finding money to do all these things. Perhaps go back to the roots and start there again. Just a thought.
And we do have someone from Rural Women on our board, on our trust, and we, before the Community Connected was even trialled, we had Leslie went through and found out all the different volunteer groups that were doing that sort of transporting, so people who were taking people from medical centres into hospital, etc. And there's quite a lot of them, and we were looking at doing something slightly different, but it's still a work in progress. COVID has not helped with it at all, and we're just kind of we do have funding from ECAN, which is great, but I mean it's $5,000, so it's but yeah, it's a work in progress, and I think that's all we can really say because it has been hindered a lot by COVID. Neil.
Yeah, same question as before. Leslie, thanks for the work you do. It's amazing that's the stuff that you do for the district, which is great. Just on that suicide one, why don't you drop the numbers down for district specific?
It's a very sensitive one. It's a bit like family violence, and the feedback that we've had is the numbers are small enough to be virtually identifiable in terms of particular families, individuals. So it's something that we haven't published. We've been severely told by health that it's a sensitive topic, and we can refer to it, but to stick the numbers out. Same with police. I cannot get the information from the police on that issue, and I'm told that it's because it's so small as to be virtually identifiable down to the number of the street where the people live.
Oh, no,
in a small community like ours.
Not asking for that information at all. I disagree with you. That Mid Canterbury had 5. What's wrong with the number 5? That's all I'm asking for. Don't want streets, names, nothing, just number. Yep.
I'll look into it.
We strike this a lot with government departments, and we're sick of it.
Yeah.
We want specific information for our district.
Yep.
So just the number would be fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Angus.
Thank you, Leslie. Just on that track from the Mayor, our budget's not looking that good at the moment, and we're going to have a number of sensitive discussions with people and coming up in the very near future, and they're going to ask, why are you funding all these organisations? So if we can't give them a basic fact, we're dead in the water. So please help us on that one.
Okay.
Sounds good. Any further questions for Leslie? Anything to add, Kevin, or you're fine? No.
Not really. I can see we're probably eating into.
No, we're all good. All good. Thank you very much for coming along this morning and giving us an update. Really good to see all the work that we're doing through Safe Communities on a couple of pages. It shows what we've got a great group there, and just the collaboration is really good. So thank you very much. Councillors, we will break for a cuppa for 10 minutes, I think. Pardon me? 10 minutes. So back here at everyone. Oops, I'll start again. Welcome back, everyone. Next up, we have Citizens Advice Bureau, and we have Sarah, the coordinator, and Joe, the chair. So welcome. We've got half an hour set aside, so if you'd just like to run through, we've got your report here in front of us. If you just want to run through, and then we'll go ask for questions after that.
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you very much for having me talk today. I do apologise for the lateness of the report. I was pretty unwell last week, so thank you for accepting that a bit later. I just want to start by kind of going through roughly the top points, what we've kind of been covering, our kind of highlights and some examples with that, and then talk a bit about what's coming up in the next 6 months, and then obviously opening for questions. I would also like to cover a couple of questions that I was asked last time, so I just wanted to cover those too. So access to information empowers people to solve problems, understand their rights, access services and enhance their personal and community wellbeing. We're playing a vital role helping residents, newcomers, migrants and tourists of Mid-Canterbury to navigate these issues around their rights and responsibilities and to access services and community information they need. A couple of examples that I've got that we've had over the last 6 months is we had, after the flooding, some people wanting to donate some money to the cause, to people that needed. They just didn't know who to contact about donating some money and didn't want to interrupt kind of the civil defence side of it, because it wasn't really a civil defence kind of question. So things like that we're trying to kind of to deal with. People asking about how to make a will. Do you need a lawyer to make a will? Really interesting questions, and if you don't have a lot of money and you have a very simple situation, then we can give them some advice on where to get a free will making kit and the different types of things they need to think about when they write that up. We had a guy bring up wanting to start a business. Had made a few products at home and a few friends had shown interest in these products and thought how great they were. Why don't you make a business out of this? So we went through some things that he might need to consider. We talked about, we've researched the council website and looked into the bylaws. We looked at whether there was waste, water runoff. We looked at impact to neighbours. We discussed vehicle delivery times, which are all your bylaws. We also looked at zero, sales, what they'd need for IRD. We found contacts for a business mentor, and also we talked about the fact that he was still in a rental property and whether or not his landlord and insurance would be suitable for the situation. So as you can see, we've got a wide variety of things that come in and a wide spanning a wide group of the public. It's not just low socioeconomic people we're helping, we're actually helping everyone, and that's really special about this service. So it's also very hard for the volunteers to prepare for such questions. So a lot of the time we just have a really, really good website that backs up what the volunteers can research. And the CAB website has just recently won an award for plain English writing. So the award is incredibly valuable because it's just written in such a way that is just really accessible to everybody and explains it so clearly, and then you can kind of go in and link it up to other sites. So Mid-Canterbury CAB's got a lot of data coming through. It's been well received, and also a lot of other services are starting to ask me about how our data can be used to help them with funding applications or with other projects and trying to gain other support from people. People like Volunteering Mid-Canterbury, the Emergency Housing Group, Safety. So our data can be used to support those groups to make decisions on the community, and this information will just get more valuable the longer we are operating, as it can show trends and real community need and importantly, the gaps in services that are currently, we can't find, help for the person in our community. So that's really exciting. So back in 2020, the business case for CAB presented the need to significantly improve the quality of Mid-Canterbury community information. So we've spent significant time and resource and volunteer hours updating records, contact details for clubs, groups, and the ever-changing mammoth task that is the community directory. We've had lots of requests where we've kind of made a couple of kind of lists because we've been asked a couple of times, and these have included accommodation, so a lot of people wanting help with emergency accommodation, mental health support, driving lessons, which was an interesting one because being commercial we can't have that on the community directory, but we were having so many requests and so many slightly different queries. Like, for example, one person wanted to know if anybody had a manual vehicle that they could get a driving licence in, and there was nobody in Mid-Canterbury with a manual. You had to supply your own. So really interesting stuff we're finding out for people. We've got a dedicated volunteer who's in charge of as the information officer, and in many CABs this is actually a paid position, so we've got a volunteer in that position, and it's something that we'd like to see developed by our board over the coming months or years. I'm going to flick through a few pages. So some key achievements that we've done over the last 6 months from July to December. Interestingly, over this time, COVID's played a huge impact, as you can imagine. We have supported nationally by answering 0800 calls. This has been a really interesting step for our volunteers. It's really strengthened their confidence and their capability of answering these questions. A number of them came from Auckland. A lot of the CABs up there closed to face, and with reduction in volunteers being able to answer stuff from home, it's really made us think about how we run and operate our service and have volunteers answering calls and emails from home. So that's something we've really worked towards strengthening. This also came about after the flooding too, so we could operate quite successfully at home. So we acknowledge and recognise that we've had acknowledgement and recognition of our service as important for the community by being invited to a number of groups, the Refugee Settlement Group and the Family Violence Re-established Network, which is Safe Families. So that's been really exciting for us at CAB that we've been invited to join these groups. They're really valuable and important parts of the community and be so well accepted. I was asked to present at the CAB New Zealand National AGM. I think I spoke after the Commissioner and the it's eluded me now, sorry. Spoke after some important people anyway. So it was quite exciting that to be recognised as such a new service and just doing so well to be able to speak at something like that. I was also asked to speak on the Pacific Days radio show with Brian Sagala, to talking about the great work that we're doing with the Pacific communities, and also got a chance to speak about what Janice and Welcoming Communities was doing, and Mercedes Walkham, and previously Adi and the newcomers in the Migrant Centre, so that was really exciting. We've had mystery clients come through our service. We've had some really excellent results considering we're so new, and that can be something that we can be incredibly proud of. National Office was blown away by the level that we received and the scores we received compared to some of the other CABs around the country. So that's really very, top for us. Volunteer accreditation, we have managed to accredit 13 volunteers over the last 6 months, and this means that we're allowed to go on to the next steps of establishing the board. To do the volunteer accreditation, they've got to do a number of training modules, in person or online, do observations, and then start doing the volunteering and continue with ongoing learning. And to keep their accreditation, they have to commit to regular sessions and regular training, so it's an ongoing thing to be able to keep your accreditation, so it's quite full on. We celebrated our first birthday, which was very quietly held through COVID, and we've also gained an honorary solicitor with Tiffany McRae joining our team, which is fabulous. So I'm just going to quickly demonstrate the website. Very excitingly, we got to participate with a bit of help from Leslie Symington, kind of pushing with National Office to be part of the pilot project for the website. So some of the issues around the website is that to navigate to the community directory, you have to kind of go through a number of steps. So this is hopefully going to be a little bit more manageable and user-friendly. So I'm just... Okay, so exciting, ta-da! This is not public knowledge yet, so, or public, available to the public yet, so please don't... Sorry, I don't know what that is. Okay, so... Yeah.
Sorry, Sarah,
Yeah.
because we're being recorded, so this will come out to the public at some stage.
Absolutely.
But it just can't be used at the moment.
It's just piloting at the moment. So if they go on it, that'll be fine. But yeah, absolutely, they can have a play and let us know if there's any issues. So the idea is that it can be put into different categories here, and this can be in sets of 3. So this is just to start with, so we can add a few more depending on what we come up with. And what are kind of our more common things. So for example, if we look at community halls, we can select that, so stuff that's for hire around here. So we can have a look at all things. We get a lot of requests for hall hire, so this is a really good one to have a look through. And really excitingly is the map function. So that's obviously list view, and if we look at map view, if we put it there, it shows exactly whereabouts all these things are. So if you're running an event and you're wanting to run an event in, say, Dorry, you know that you can, these are the closest event hire places that you can have. Please note there are a few gaps. There are a few gaps in some of our halls at the moment, and yep, so that's great. Let us know if there's gaps. The reason why there are gaps is that they often have not contacted us back or replied to any messages, and if they don't, then we don't know it's current, so we can't commit to having current and correct information on the site. So it's quite important that people trust the site and trust that the information is correct. So it's really important. So it's just trying to develop that relationship with the community and saying this is really important for them to get back to us and let us know. And as you can imagine, each sports club has changes in president and changes in contact details, and so it's an ever-changing feast. So we are trying to, there's a lot of work. So that's just a good example there. And we go back to the start there. Say we look at clubs. And then you can look at just all the different clubs that we've got here. One of the other ones we've had a lot of requests for is service clubs. Obviously, I think maybe people wanting to get some sponsorship or some support from different service clubs. They want the list of all of them, so that's maybe something that we look on there too. And once again, map view, very handy to see. We've got a few in Methven, but there's a lot of stuff that's missing. So we did take over what was on the community directory currently, so this is about just building it from here, so this is really exciting. our volunteers won't necessarily use this site. This is more for the public to use. It's just a more user-friendly one for the public. Ours will still use CabNet, and it's still all in CabNet. We will update CabNet, and this will be automatically updated, so it's not extra work for us. So this is a very exciting project. So yeah, pretty excited about that. So things that we're going to focus on in the future. Obviously, that there. Volunteers, it's a big part of our group. COVID's obviously impacting training and recruitment, and also the amount of time and commitment the volunteers do have. So really working on that to increase our numbers, especially for opening hours and building capacity there. I'd love to increase our hours. We increased our hours over the last 6 months, but have just dropped that Tuesday afternoon. We were hoping to run right through on Tuesday, but we've just dropped that. What we tried to do over the last month is do a split team situation, so for COVID, so we are well capable of dealing with anything that crops up. So we split into 2 teams, working week about, so that has been going incredibly well. Nice to practice that before things start happening. We're continuously being asked for paper directories, and I'm not sure if that's something that you guys can help with in the future. People just want some paper stuff. It's really interesting. There's a lot of really good reasons for that, and maybe that's something that we can work together on. But yeah, lots of people are still wanting paper. So promoting the next steps to promoting the service to businesses and community groups, support workers and professionals. I've done a lot of talks to support workers and professionals with all of the networks that I've been involved with, and so we're getting a lot of referrals that way, and a lot of them just saying, oh, I just got this client and they just need a bit of help with this, what do you think? And then we'll do the bit of research for them and get back to them. But that person becomes our client, not the, so they could be working with somebody that's, say, Pacific Island, but our contact and demographic details are the person that contacted us, so they could be completely different. So it's a little bit tricky in that respect. And also obviously building our service to individuals and promoting to individuals, and doing a bit more there, and also doing a bit more around that Facebook and Messenger and all that sort of stuff, which we're kind of getting into. In terms of information to visitors, we're dealing with Bruce Moffat regularly, just to try and see what's up to date. He's spoken to our volunteers about the website, and so they're all capable of looking at the website and finding out what is coming up, so we're doing a lot of work there. And coming up, we've got a scam awareness project with Safer Mid Canterbury and Neighbourhood Support, which is going to be really interesting. So we've looked into the resources and finding out there's a little black book with all the different scams, so we've ordered some of those resources, and yeah, just working out and upskilling the volunteers on what they need to do when people kind of ring up. Also, we've got Awareness Week next month, with the theme being tenancy and renters' rights and landlord issues, so just dealing with some upskilling and training of volunteers before that, which is really exciting. Some of our client inquiries, we've obviously had an increase. So the previous time I reported it was over 7 months, so from opening to June. So we've had a decrease in face-to-face services, which is obviously, you can all understand why. But we've had an increase in phone, email, and obviously Messenger and Facebook starting to pick up there too. So that's really exciting stuff. Obviously there's lots of stuff in the report there that you can see with all the different questions, our top 10 inquiries, our demographics, all that sort of stuff. You can have a look. Client profile, you can see obviously Ashburton is where people are getting a lot of our inquiries are coming from. I'd like to mention that again, that I think that, say, for example, if somebody was in Rakaia and they wanted to talk about family separation or family violence, they're not going to say they're from Rakaia. They'll probably just say that they're from Ashburton. So yes, that is helpful, but I think just be aware that some of the queries may, will just be saying Ashburton. It also is just the demographics and client profiles for our client interviews. It doesn't cover our quick reference stuff, because we don't ask if somebody just wants to know about a Rotary Club and a specific detail for that. We don't need to take their demographic details or how they found out about all that sort of stuff. So it's just the really the longer kind of client interviews. So interesting with the age groups, we've had an increase in the 30 to 39-year-old age group, and I don't know whether that's because I'm doing a bit more on Facebook, but that's been really interesting, and also an increase in the 50 to 70-year-old age groups too. So yeah, an increase in there. We've got lots of wonderful, wonderful volunteers. We had a great time at the Christmas party. We checked out we used the opportunity to check out the hut holders hall out at Hakateri. And if you need to hire a hall out there, incredible. It's got pool table and table tennis, and it's got a kitchen and barbecue. And it's a really good way for the volunteers to be able to see a venue and then be able to explain it when they're talking to somebody that's coming in. So a really good way to get to know everybody. So in terms of our board development, we've got a minimum of 5 members that we need, and we now have 8. So we have Joe Veal, obviously, is coming on as chair. We've got Mary Bailey, who's coming on as secretary, Nikita Begbie, who's treasurer, Andrea Carter, Pam Kennedy, Tiffany McRae, who's a local barrister, and Graham Matthews, who's just moved down from Auckland, and he used to be a board member, information officer and treasurer up in Helensville CAB, so a real valuable asset to the team. So that's really exciting. So we've got 8, so yeah, really exciting there. And yesterday we received our incorporated society status. So we needed 15 members and we've signed it all, and yay, so that's the next step. So very, very excited about that. And obviously our tech clinics are going really well. Like I explained last time, I think the tech clinic, we've developed some resources to show other options if they want to do extra learning, but really it's just about a simple question. How do I make this icon bigger? How do I, really, really simple things that they don't need a whole course for, they just want a little thing kind of fixed. We also facilitated the Geeks on Wheels team to go to hospice, and they did a session there for clients that came in there wanting to know about stuff, so that was really neat that we were able to work with that. And we've got a few other projects on the go with Geeks on Wheels and Digital Waitaha and doing some other things, so that's really exciting. The immigration clinic, although pretty slow at the moment, possibly kind of like it because it's in the daytime, but she's really hoping to do some work with employers about changes in visitor requirements and things like that, so people can come and listen to the updates on that, so that will be really great. So Citizens Advice Bureau Mid-Canterbury, we believe that we provide a really valuable service to the Mid-Canterbury community. Thank you for letting me present today. I'm incredibly proud of what we've achieved so far, and I look forward to some questions. I just want to, before we do have questions, I just want to talk to Angus asked about meeting the needs of tourists last time. Our location is not going to be suitable for meeting the needs of tourists, but we are capturing the really tricky ones. So we are capturing the ones where they are kind of newcomers to town, they're not here for long, but they're having issues with employment. So we're capturing that really tricky kind of stuff. So hopefully that will, hopefully that will be okay.
Great.
And also, I think you asked about the woman 40 age group that was the highest last time, and why that was. So I've done a bit of a look into that, and I believe that age group is a real catch in the middle. They've sometimes got young children, teenagers, they've got elderly parents, so they're inquiring about wills or rest homes or things like that. There's kind of separations or marriage or starting a business, so they're kind of right in that middle, but they're also asking on behalf of others. So I think that's why that age group and women are figuring more highly. So yeah,
Thanks,
so hopefully
Sarah.
that answers that. Yeah.
Thank you, and thanks for bringing those questions from 6 months ago back, the answers back. Those. So we've got a few questions. I'll start with John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations on the good work that you're doing. Just looking at your figures on pages 8 and 9, you've got total CAB services for the first for the first 6 months, June 21, 339, and then from July to December, 366.
Yep.
Is that the number of contacts you're having with people, or is that the number of people you're actually seeing or having dealings with?
So that is the number of people we're seeing, dealing with.
So you might see someone 3 or 4 times, but they'll still only count as one person as
Yes,
far as
that's
your
correct.
records are concerned.
That's correct, yeah.
Now, looking at your breakdown, I just don't follow that.
Sorry?
Face to face, the column underneath, the row underneath, you've got December, and you've got 129 to 165, 63 to 136. Can you just...
Sorry. So last year I reported on 100 those figures, 129. It actually should have been 165. So the 129 it relates to face-to-face for client interviews, and the 63 is phone interviews for client interviews, whereas the figures 165, 163 are total, so that's including the quick reference.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and when we go over to the figures to December, all you've got is decrease or increase. Is that a decrease from what your first 6 months were? Or what is the meaning of those?
131, obviously, the previous 6 months, or it's actually 7 months, was 165 face-to-face, and it's gone to 131, so that's a decrease in face-to-face services. So the previous 6 months was 136 for phone, and it's increased to 169, and email 36, and it's increased to 61. Does that make sense?
Go over to page 9, we'll look at your bar graphs there, and I don't know how relevant they are because it only takes 1 or 2 people and it changes the type of inquiries you've got by quite a substantial amount. But what I am looking at, the dates there, you've got the date on the top bar histogram there goes from for 8 months to the end of July 2021. The one there, second one goes from 1 July to December 2021. So are you double accounting some people in there?
No, that's incorrect. I made a total mistake there. It's 7 months, and it's the 2nd of December because I went from when we opened, and it's supposed to be the 30th of June. Sorry, all of those are supposed to be, and then I've copied and pasted them into the next one, so it'll supposed to be to the end of June.
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
sorry.
that's good. Thank you. Angus has a question.
Madam Chair, yes, I asked the question because originally when the new civic building was thought of, there was going to be a desk for tourist information. Are we actually giving tourist information out satisfactorily to visitors in your considered opinion, because you are involved in giving out information? That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, good question. I think in terms of tourists, our location is not suitable for them to, they wouldn't find us I don't think they'd find us. We do have tourist information. We've got a stand that Bruce has set up and people can access that without seeing our service, which is great. So they can see it from kind of 9 till 5. So we don't have to be open. We also don't see if they come and collect it. So they could come in, grab some brochures and leave without having to see us. So he just comes and restocks that as and when he can. I think that in terms of tourists, I think that the library and the new civic centre will be the best place for tourists. And we've been working really closely with your customer services team, with Amanda Watson, and also with the library, and I've done demonstrations on our service, and we're getting a lot of referrals from the library and from council staff. So I'm kind of pleased that, I think they'll be able to refer to us if they need to, and if they need any further resources, we've got a good relationship going there. So I think we'll be good.
That's good. Thank you. Stuart.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Morning, ladies. I think you provide a very valuable service for the amount of grant you actually get from the council.
Thank you.
I see you got your income as 25,000 from the council. We actually give Kevin 35,000 towards your organisation.
No, that's towards
50,
safe.
Wasn't it? 50 last year?
Yes, you're right, sorry. It was 50, 45 for the startup costs. Yeah, just for the startup costs. And then it was 15 for the year. And then we received 15 last year. I did query it because I thought it should have been 15 plus GST because we were providing a service, so it should have been plus GST, and they gave it to us less GST, so they only gave us 13 something, and I queried it and they put it up to 15, but I think it should be 15 plus GST. Yeah, I think that we do provide a really valuable service, and over the last year it's been incredibly hard to find funds. We've been declined a number of times, as I've put in the report, through various reasons. Mainly they've given COVID and increased applications and less money to give out. Couple of times we didn't qualify, so hopefully we're building that incorporated status and will be charitable status, and we'll be able to have ability to have more applications to places. But I am concerned that there is a lot of groups that are struggling, and we will be just kind of taking from another group. So the more funding that you can give us, the less I'll have to try and do fundraisers and guess the jelly beans in the jar, and where I really want to be focused on training those volunteers and providing a good service. Yeah.
The other thing that surprises me is the variation in your top 10 categories. In those 6 months, there's a huge change of people wanting advice.
If you look on page 10, the graph that shows just the words, obviously the words where it's bigger, that we're getting more questions. It's changed dramatically in the 2 6-month periods. You know, when we were getting kind of community law and lots of employment and bullying type issues, and now it's lots of employment but relationship issues, custody. You know, family dynamics is really changing and put a lot of pressure on families at the moment. So yeah, really interesting stuff. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Lynette, you have a question?
I'm just going to ask the commercial users, the sector, who are wanting data and things, can you put a small charge on that to help fund your operation?
No, yeah, we're a free service. We can't. No, sorry. Yeah.
There's no distinguishing between that.
No.
And it just sort of, you're doing all these clinics, and I'm pleased to see that you're working with the library, because they're doing some of that as well.
Yes.
But the immigration, are you working, there's an immigration place on Alfred Forest Road, and they'll be doing it hard at the moment. Are you working in with them as well, or you're out on your own on that one?
So we So CABs, to give immigration advice, you have to be a registered immigration advisor. However, CAB volunteers are allowed, they've got an exemption, they're allowed to give information. So we can give certain information. Immigration's a really tricky one though. Volunteers, it's a lot of pressure to get right. So Maria from Jimini's Immigration, she has given us her time free, so we're not being charged anything, and she's offered to do 2 free hours a month. So just the same as the Geeks on Wheels, they're not charging us, they're just wanting to provide a free service to the community, and we're just taking advantage of that for our community members because, yeah, it's a great, yeah. So she is a business herself, but she's just offered to do 2 free hours for anybody that wants to come in and have a chat to somebody. Yeah.
I just hate to see a local business sort of who are losing a lot of work at the moment.
Yes.
Losing out to somebody giving free advice. That's my concern with all these clinics.
Yeah.
You're giving out free advice and steering them, but we've got businesses in these spaces who are probably going to not have these customers and.
Yes, I totally understand. Yeah, she is a business though, so yeah, I get that, and that's part of us trying to be independent, and that leads into a really good point about how we can't get funding from businesses, because if we go to a business and ask for funding and sponsorship, any employer or employee or a client who's had an issue with them, you know, can't come to see us because we could be, you know, deemed to be in with this business. So it's a very, very fine line, and we're trying to be, really considerate. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we've got our last question from Carolyn.
Thank you. Comment really. Sarah, congratulations. You've gone from woe to go in just over a year, and you're seeing about 340 people. So that's a great service for the town. I think you should be really congratulated on that. With regards to the GST question, now that you're an incorporated society, are you GST exempt or do you pay GST?
So because we're under National Office, they are GST registered, so you
pay GST. So you should actually, that 15,000 will either be inclusive.
It should. From what I understand, the previous year we received 15 plus GST.
Yeah.
And this year we received 15 less GST.
And when I look at your page 10, you know, the little lovely coloured writing residential, is that is the bottom one in proportion to the top one? So that gives us an idea that, like the top one we had no COVID questions, the second one we've got more, and we've got our residential tenancy including disputes just about has disappeared. No one asked for that, you know, like it's a whole new thing.
Yes.
Whole new category. Thank you. And one more comment in response to Lynette. The idea of the Citizens Advice Bureau is that it is free and it is accessible for all comers. So not all comers coming through the town know where to go for commercial or sort of proprietary advice, and are reluctant to spend the money to access that, or it may not be in a timely fashion. So it sort of sits aside from the competitive commercial world, and really, I think. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn, and I think that's it, but congratulations, and thank you for showing us the new website. I think that'll be a real asset, having that community directory, and a lot of the councillors are on different hall and reserve boards, so I'm sure they'll go home and ask for those hall boards, etc., to get in touch with you so that they can get their hall, etc., on the map. But thank you very much for coming along, and thanks, Joe, as well.
Oh, that's right. It's a whole new experience for me, so thank you very much.
Great, so we'll move on, and we've got Ashburton Trust Event Centre next. And we welcome Roger and George up. We're running a wee bit behind time, sorry, but we'll get it all done. So you've provided two, we've got the draft budget and we've got the report from July to December. So welcome, Roger. We'll let you lead the charge. Just tell us which document we need to be looking at.
So basically, to start with, I'll just run through the report that we've sent out, and then George will cover off the financial budgeting and go through that. So just in regards to the report from the 6-month period, the report that we've provided is pre-read traffic light setting, and it probably goes a long way to demonstrating how quickly the industry is changing at the moment, depending on what settings we're in. It's just a real roller coaster. So we have, like, the period July through to December, we did experience another lockdown in August. This resulted in 52 events being cancelled or postponed, which is huge for us. That period of the year is our busy period normally. And yeah, the one, well, it was from the 17th of August through to the end, we had a total of 52 cancellations. And it's become clear that promoters are becoming very cautious now when booking new dates, with many indicating they wish to tour their shows, but under the current level of uncertainty, are unwilling to commit to a date. Of these, 3 of the promoters are bringing international acts, which won't happen until quarantine-free travel resumes. The biggest disappointment over the period, I guess, comes from the cancellation, or the eventual cancellation, but initially the postponement of the Jesus Christ Superstar, and having to advise the cast and crew, close to 100 people, that we were having to postpone the show was one of the hardest things, given the hundreds of hours and the time spent rehearsing, set construction, ringing lights, sound and wardrobe. So the production was basically 7 days away from opening. So it was absolutely in the final stages, and yeah, it just was a huge disappointment to have to pull the plug on it. The disappointment was tempered slightly with the knowledge that a rescheduled date in March had been confirmed with the licence holders, and following successful auditions to replace the cast members who could not commit to the new dates, we were again days away from recommencing rehearsals when the traffic light changed to red in February. Meaning we could no longer rehearse safely given the number of cast members from outside the district, and with the numbers involved in the production exceeding 100 people the closer we got to the production date. Due to the 6-month period between the original postponement and the commencement of the rehearsals in February 22, it was felt that to again postpone to an unknown date in the future was asking too much of the cast, and the decision was made to cancel. This decision was made slightly easier with the knowledge that we had been successful in our application to the government's Arts and Culture Event Support Scheme, who had agreed to providing funding to offset unrecoverable costs associated with the production to a maximum amount of $62,000. And we are currently working through stage 2 of the application, where we are required to submit final costs associated with the production, including those for venue hire, technical support, wardrobe, sound and lighting hire, marketing, etc. This is then evaluated before a final payment is made. Ticket refunds are now being worked through for the 1,886 tickets that had been sold up to the point of cancellation, with 3/4 having been refunded. It's been very humbling with the refunds. We've had close to $7,000 actually donated back to ATEC from ticket holders. Rather than accepting a refund, they've donated the amount, so that has been very nice. We're currently looking for storage facilities to store the set. As you can imagine, it's a huge piece of equipment that we've got to find somewhere to store now before we can use it again. Currently, we're very grateful to Clark McLeod, who's allowing us to store it in one of his facilities, but it could be up to 12 months before we are able to use it again, so we are seeking somewhere to store it. I'd like to publicly thank the incredible cast and crew and our sponsors and donors for the support we've received for the production, and I can assure them when the time is right, we will be back. It wasn't all doom and gloom, however, during that period. Following the lockdown period in August, a number of events were successfully held, including the Ashburt College Ball, 2 cultural evenings from the Sri Lankan and Filipino community, and a very successful, or eventually successful, production from the Children's Theatre, Big Canterbury Children's Theatre, who produced the show The Little Mermaid. Another highlight that demonstrated the venue's versatility was Fight Night 2021, which is the first time we've staged a boxing match in the venue. So the O'Reilly Auditorium, the seats were removed and boxing ring installed with corporate tables on stage. And again, it was a very successful sporting event. So, with so many events cancelled in the lead up to Christmas, it was decided that we should do attempt to do a stage a Christmas concert. So a Facebook post was put out on the ATEC Facebook page, and we were blown away actually by the number of performers who were dead keen to get back into being on stage and performing for us. So we had performers, and they're all locals, but these people have moved out of Ashburton, so we had performers from Auckland, Timaru, Christchurch, all wanting to come, or they were basically coming home for Christmas, and they were just keen to get on stage. So it turned out to be a very successful concert in the end, and I have to thank the Ashburton District Council for getting in behind that and making it happen. It was a last minute decision, and purposely we kept it to the last minute in case we were unable to do it, but thankfully it went ahead, and yeah, it was a great show. With the introduction of vaccine mandates, it was decided that ATEC would become a My Vaccine Pass venue, and this has generally been well received, with resistance from just a small number of attendees in the early days. Most people now understand how it operates and what's involved, and yeah, we don't tend to have too much problem with it now. In the previous report, we mentioned that we'd postponed a planned upgrade to a technical infrastructure. But following discussions with the board, we are now going to push on with that. It's probably not the right time to be seeking sponsorship, but I think the key thing at the moment is to get plans in place that we are ready to roll once the timing becomes right again. It's 2 years now since we initially started looking at it, and it's prudent now, I think, that we go back and revisit the requirements and the wants that we had at that stage and reevaluate whether they're still appropriate. But I think the key thing is we keep the venue technically up to date and capable of handling the touring events that come through. You'll notice in the graphs that are provided in the report that there's quite obviously a decline over the COVID periods. Auditorium, especially the O'Reilly Auditorium. When you look at July to December 2019, there was 96 days of use compared to 34 in the same period in 21. So COVID has certainly had a huge effect, and it's mainly come from the performance type event, but we are very lucky that the community events, which is a huge part of what we do, is still there and still supporting the venue. And just from a financial point of view, well, COVID and the resulting lockdown made it a challenging year financially, with the government's wage subsidy, resurgent payments and a reduction in staff hours. We also had fundraising events and funding from the Lion Foundation. This all came together to assist us in getting to the end of the period in a reasonably strong financial position. And it has been a huge benefit as we go forward from here now. The income that we've had has just been decimated. So we're basically relying at the moment on that income that we'd actually managed to achieve in the previous 6-month period to carry us through. But Monday's announcement from the government that further funding is likely. It does look promising at the moment. We haven't actually done our figures yet, but I'm sure we can justify a 40% reduction in income quite easily. We'd just like to acknowledge our funding, the funding that we've received, Community Trust Bank South Canterbury, the Lion Foundation, and the Ashburton District Council, and also our business partners, Heartland Bank, EA Network and Gary McCormick Transport. And these funders certainly make a difference, in the period that we're in at the moment. Also our staff and volunteers, they continue to provide an essential service assisting many areas of across the venue's operation, and I thank them for their loyalty, dependability and support during what has been another difficult time for everyone. Being on the front line, there have been some challenges dealing with new COVID scanning requirements and public criticism, so I thank them for their professionalism in dealing with these difficult situations. I would also like to acknowledge my staff and thank them for their understanding and continued support during what has been a difficult period, where they've endured reduced hours and uncertainty. Their commitment to ensuring the financial viability of ATEC is much appreciated. The current red light setting has meant staff hours have again been reduced to 4 days a week, and we are currently looking to support them by seeking additional hours of work elsewhere. We do have a great team of very competent employees, and it would be a tragedy to lose them. And just in summary, while uncertainty continues within the industry, we remain positive in our planning for the future, evaluation and planning for a much needed upgrade of the venue and its operational facilities provides a focus for staff and management, and will ensure that ATEC remains a hub for quality entertainment as we move past current restrictions. As difficult as it has been, I am heartened by the continued support we receive from the Ashburton District Council and central government. While they are unable to secure any additional funding grants made available by the government's art, culture and heritage, I was very pleased to receive confirmation that we were to receive support from the Arts and Culture Event Support Scheme. The outside hire department continues to grow on the back of our skilled technicians and our ability to work closely with our clients to satisfy their requirements at competitive rates. While a number of annual events were cancelled in the reporting period, there were other large-scale events where ATEC provided staging, sound, lighting and audio-visual systems. And I would also like to offer our support to the council in the establishment of the performance space in the new civic centre. And just in regards to the setting up of that, we do have a lot of hire equipment that would certainly work within the venue, and it would be simple, simply a matter of looking at how it can be set up so we can move in and install equipment quickly and make it easier to operate. So there we have it. It hasn't been an exciting period, but it's a period that we've come through in a fairly or reasonably strong place. And I think the hard part now is probably going to be the next 6 months. Looking at the calendar going forward, it's not looking pretty. Although I have to say in probably the last week, there has been a lot more inquiries coming through from corporate events, which is nice to see. But I do think performance-wise, we will be looking strongly at either bringing in performance ourselves at a local base, or actually having local or producing performance events ourselves, which do seem to be quite successful and do sell quite well in Ashburton. So that's us.
Thank you. Do you want to go through the financials now, or would you rather take questions?
We can do the financials first.
Okay.
Yep.
Councillor's happy with that. We'll just do that and then we'll take the questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello, well, you will have had the audited annual accounts for June 21. So I don't know whether you want to just talk about those. We've probably talked about them quite a lot already. But sufficient to say, just in summary, we had total turnover of 839,795, and that's on page 7 of that KPMG report, and a loss for the year of 108,934, which was down from the previous year where it was 174. In that loss, you've got to appreciate that the major reason for the loss is claiming depreciation on all the assets, which isn't funded from anywhere.
George, just to interrupt, we only have the draft budget, we don't have that financial report,
Don't have
sorry.
these?
No,
No.
we don't seem to.
No, we just have the ATEC draft budget.
We have the draft budget for 22,
Righto. Well, you
23.
should have these.
George, could I just ask that if you confirm you've sent them to us, we will circulate them to councillors, but for this discussion, without them having been circulated, it's very hard to debate.
Okay, thank you. Right, the budget is prepared on the basis of hopefully not being totally in the COVID area in 2023. Every year we produce a budget and every year we don't achieve it because we get shut down. But we're budgeting on an income for the 2020 year of 781,000, expenses of slightly higher, and we have a budget for a loss of 8,300. It is very difficult to estimate that for the year ahead. Basically, we don't have a clue what's going to happen in the from July onwards, but we expect we will get close to this. The key thing in there is that we are asking the council to increase our grant by 4%. We haven't had an increase in that for 3 years, and that's at our request. We didn't think we needed it, and we have managed to get through. But we have only got through because of the substantial wage subsidies and things we have received, and we are hopeful to get the latest round of subsidies as well, so that will help the cause. But overall, that's what the budget. We don't expect any major change, and we haven't budgeted for any major capital expenditure.
Thank you.
If we do have capital expenditure, we would expect to get grants from various groups to support that.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll go to questions now, if that's okay. So Carolyn's...
just talking about capital expenditure, actually, George. I just read in the report, we've got two documents in front of us. We've got the Event Centre Council report to July to December, and the ATEC draft budget. When I read the report says, time has come that your 13-year-old second-hand equipment needs to be upgraded.
Yes.
When I look in the budget, I can see under expenses, you've got 29,000 additional hire, sound and lighting equipment. Is that what you won't incur that charge when you upgrade?
No, that's completely separate. So those charges apply for us having to bring in additional equipment for an event.
Okay. So what will the cost of the upgrading be, and where is it reflected in the budget?
So it's not actually in the budget at this stage.
Oh, it just said you were going to go ahead with it, but you haven't put it in the budget.
No.
Okay.
We haven't committed to go ahead with it. What we've committed to is to go ahead to update the plan we did 2 years ago, which had a cost, from memory, over 200,000.
Oh, really? Right. Okay.
So we're doing the homework to see if that's still relevant. A lot of these costs would have gone up dramatically. Most of this stuff is high-tech equipment that it doesn't come with a cheap price tag. So we need to review what that's going to cost and what is more essential and less essential. So it will be a total review. And at that point, we would source funds from whoever to try and fund for it.
I would hope to have some figures in place by mid-year.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really haven't got a question. I just wanted to say, gentlemen, congratulations for your resilience and your organising ability and planning to get through what you've rightly described as one of the most challenging times that we have ever seen. And having had some experience in producing and directing shows and things like that, I just take my hat off to you and I offer you my heartiest congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. I think we all agree with that. Lynette.
And I'd endorse that as well, and another comment, you're looking at new ways and looking local, which is really good, but I'd just like to say, as a Lions member, we appreciate the advice and support you've given to us to and the encouragement to put an idea into an event And I think perhaps this is a way forward, is, you know, at the moment to get through this, getting little events going again and getting people's confidence back to go into them.
Absolutely, like community events, like the graphs clearly show that, you know, it's a good 70% of our venue usage. So that, you know, supporting them and bringing them back into the venue, you know, once we're able to, will be key focus. And yeah, you can't deny that they're not supported. You know, that every event that we do, you know, the community gets behind and makes them happen. So definitely well worth having.
Yeah, it was just like a Christmas tree one done. You know, it was just an idea floated, and you guys actually put all that together, and it was very successful. We thank you for your dedication, and yeah.
We do have a very good team, and they, you know, they do like to get behind that sort of thing, and it's something different for them to work on.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. Great report. I don't envy you trying to make those numbers meet. I just wanted to congratulate you on that Christmas concert. That was amazing, and I know you were the driver behind that. But my question is, have you, and you probably have thought about this, having small concerts with up to 100 people, whether you know it's locally produced, and there's a lot of people out there, as you know, will come, and whether you can run a budget model, a series of concerts where you just put 100 people through the venue twice a day. And
we are looking at, like, we're utilising Arts on Tour quite a bit at the moment, because they're, you know, they're very good shows done on a, you know, shoestring budget. So we have gone back to them, and with all the cancellations, what normally happens is we only probably get 6 of them a year, because the calendar's booked for periods that they're bringing the show through. So we've gone back to them now, and we've actually secured extra performances from them. But we are also looking at bringing in other smaller events of that scale to try and, you know, start building that performance side of it up again.
Pleased to hear.
The big thing will be, you know, the willingness at the moment for people to come back into a venue amongst other people.
Oh, that's right. The time will come.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I suppose that's why you had to have the vaccine pass in place, otherwise you could have only hosted events up to 25 people.
That's right, correct? Yeah. Like the whole reason for going with the vaccine pass was basically if we didn't do that, we were restricted down to numbers that, you know, it was meaningless.
Yeah, exactly. Roger, another question?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Just one very quick question regarding the budget for the green room. It's a big jump, and I see you've made the note, additional weekly bookings. Is that something that's already in the pipeline, or you
No, they've basically come since COVID. So that we've been lucky enough to secure the Automobile Association. They're doing driver training sessions up there.
Oh, right.
And also there's a yoga session happens twice a week up there now. So it's quite good. Like, we are looking at trying to develop the spaces into usable areas that, you know, are compliant with the new structure of, you know, number of people you're allowed. I have been talking to MBIE about the auditorium, and again, it's still very confusing. But having spoken to them, they said that we could legitimately divide the venue and have 2 groups of 100 people because of the toilet facilities we have in the venue. We could, as long as we can keep those 2 groups separate and provide toilet facilities for each of those groups, we could increase the number. But it's just come to our attention today through ETNZ, who's another of the governing bodies that we sort of work under. They're saying that it has to have a separate air system for that group. So there's still, you know, even after talking to MBIE and them telling us, yes, that's fine, there's another piece of information that you've got to try and decipher and work out whether you're allowed to or not. So, yeah, for us, it was looking quite good there for a while for likes of funerals and that. We could have had anything up to 250 people in the auditorium, 50 on stage and 2 groups of 100 in the auditorium. But, yeah, with what's come through this morning, it may be in the air again. So it's very confusing, and, you know, there's a lot of time spent trying to decipher stuff to make things happen, but we'll get there.
Yeah, it's ever changing, and I don't envy you at all. But that looks like it's all for questions, so thank you both for coming along and presenting to us.
Thank you.
And best of luck. And I think the Mayor may be there at the moment at a at a presentation, so that's good. So next up, we have Sport Canterbury, and welcome Jan and Sean. Thank you both. How are you? Just to let you know, this has been live streamed, so it's been recorded and live streamed on the council Facebook page. But we have your report. Oh, sorry, I'll just go to it. I've just got the one report. So, Jan, I'll let you lead off, and we'll do questions at the end.
Right, kia ora. Well, again, thank you. It's been great to come back to see the council, and thank Hamish for reintroducing this, because I used to do it up until the previous election of the mayor prior to Mayor Brown. So it is great, and we thank you for that. It's been a continued relationship that we support, and obviously with a lot of collaboration with the alignment of our strategic plans for Ashburton District Council and Sport Canterbury. But before I begin, for those that don't know Sean, he was here with me with the last submission process, but this is Sean Campbell, our lead regional manager from Timaru, and I thank Sean for coming with me today. So you do have the report in front, and the reason it is in this format is because I felt that it was an opportunity for us to put down from Sport Canterbury our programs, delivery, what we achieve within the Ashburton District Council, obviously with support from all Sport Canterbury staff and throughout the region. But a lot of councillors here probably haven't been aware of the work and how widespread our focus is. But of course, it is all about a common focus, and that is to keep a healthy, vibrant community. So we will welcome questions, because you have the report, you've seen the report, and I hope that you will have a lot of questions for us at the end that we can explain ourselves. Our alignment, as you can see, with to implement social and wellbeing connections, Sport Canterbury is represented on groups, some of those involving Ashburton District Council. I have been on the advisory group, well, the initial working group from day one, and then continued in an advisory role. I really enjoyed the work. I think it was very well led over the last few years with Janice Mackay, and I think our achievements and workshops have been very positive and have created a lot of opportunities within the community. Sport Canterbury have led the falls prevention sector with the Mid-Canterbury Safer Community Council. We believe that we have had an impact in that area, as you will see further down in the report on what our outcomes have been. And then the others, EA Network Centre User Group, the Regional Event Funding Group, I have been part of that selection group. And then on a wider scale is Mid-Canterbury Sports Awards. We are hoping to run with it on the 13th of May. We are planning to run it on the 13th of May as a public event. We will wait and see where our challenges are over the next couple of months, but last year we actually presented our winners online, and there were over 8,000 people that viewed that. So we will try and streamline it again if that is appropriate for that. The only area that I feel hasn't happened is the EA Network's Junior Triathlon and Duathlon that I work with the staff at EA Networks. would like to see it happen, still think it could happen, and we limit our registrations, but they are where we sort of implement those connections. And then going to the collaborative regional approach, have really been really positive move by council to move to the active recreation, sport and play strategy, to renew that. It was outdated, and although we see it as challenging, I actually see it as a lot of opportunities that can be created, and I personally have really enjoyed the engagement with Tony Durham and Janice Mackay, the valuable meetings we had prior to the public workshop and prior to the survey going out. So another good partnership there, and then there are other areas that we work in as a lead group, but most recently, and isn't down there, is have been meeting with Rakaya Project for their facility out there and helping them and where I can. And just more recently, I will support the Staveley Ice Rink and refrigeration project up there. So it is a wide scope, but it is one that we see as vitally important to our district. Going over to the youth sports, there's a huge focus from Sport New Zealand and Rangatahi and Tamariki. So we are engaging with groups in that area, and we have had some really positive outcomes, especially through Te Manawa funding, but we have also working closely with Ashburton College, and then there is now with the House Group, which I'll explain a little bit later, even more opportunities to help these young people to get into active recreation, sport and play. With the support positive experience that benefits sport, there is a new program, Balance is Better. I have left this in there. It's based on the September program, which unfortunately I couldn't present, but it is about creating quality experiences for our young people. We are seeing a big drop-off in sort of that 18 to 24 age group, and obviously even less in the lower age group, but it is about keeping our young people active, and I think our district can open this up in many ways, and we are working hard to promote that. But we are the big area we believe is it can be from parents and their mindset of to what is a champion. So that is really focused on participation and skill development at the right level. So there is a big focus, and I've just been on a Sector Connect meeting this morning and listening to leaders in sport throughout the district, and we're all going to be collaboratively working together to ensure that happens. So again, watch this space. We here today hear about how COVID has affected areas. It has affected sport in a lot of ways, but it's also opened that opportunity for sport to look at themselves and readdress some of the issues that have been over the time, and one of them is making shorter seasons, not over like one sport going into winter that should be just summer. So there have been a lot of changes and a lot of directions. So COVID has had an impact, but it has also had provided administrators with ways of thinking and dealing with that. One of the areas that at the moment we're working through, Timaru even different to Mid-Canterbury, but is their request by schools still to run our power session at EA Networks. You'll remember last year was 172 students. Schools are still requesting it, and how we address that. So I can't actually, we're working through that at the moment, but we have had to cancel them bringing them all together at EA Network Centre, and we'll work through that one. The green prescription, for those that don't know, is exercise referral, so referred from a medical practitioner. That is growing in our area, and a lot of that is due to our falls area. So we know that Ashburton was the third to highest in falls through ACC. So we have worked really hard, but I think the numbers there highlight just where that work has gone, and that has been a really positive outcome for Mid-Canterbury, and we really do, I think, ask people to keep going. Our success rate is a wee bit higher than what it is now, but the only area that has really changed is our Be Active program had to go online, and it still has a showing, but it's just that face-to-face, which has created more exercise referral prescriptions, so quite a demand on our staff there. Where I said earlier about the fours that class is accredited has come from the ability of strengthening and balanced person that was appointed by Sport Canterbury, and she has been visiting here regularly. So those 24 classes running a week, providing 416 spots a week for participants to attend. And I have to say that most of the classes have kept their numbers up, so people are out there and wanting to improve their lifestyle. If you had time, it is worth looking at the case studies. And then the next one is the Te Manawa Active Aotearoa funding. We have been really lucky in Mid-Canterbury. I think that for all of Canterbury there's been some great outcomes, but the ones that I've identified in Mid-Canterbury has been from Mid-Canterbury Netball. I've had some outstanding programs, and the No Limit Netball has been very encouraging with the amount of people they have there, so much so that they had to take it from the walking program they initially had, because the increase of those with disabilities were encroaching on their time on court, so they now have the 2 sessions and need to grow it, which has been really encouraging. And I honestly would welcome any of you, if you go past, to go and have a look at those people. It's really amazing. And now they go to the cafe afterwards and have lunch. Quite noisy time to go to the cafe, but it's great. Our community pop-up programs run by YMCA is another Te Manawa funding, and that has really had an increase in participation, so much so that they're looking to expand it in other areas. They had it at Freelander Park and Warner Avenue on different days of the week, and it has actually created whānau involvement. So after school, it's a free service. They just put out a lot of gear, and basically it's a fun time, explore, play, opportunity, and we have seen whānau come along and help, who normally we know through principals that have been to have a look at it. Those, for some of those, that's their outing for the day. And then we have now seen siblings coming from Ashburton College and joining in as well. So that's also going to grow, as is our Wahine active programs, working with Ashburton College and Mount Hutt College to bring inactive wahine into the EA Network Stadium, and that program is definitely growing. We have to grow it because the numbers were limited initially. Hampstead School were successful in their Te Manawa funding to bring children with disabilities, and that was exciting because a lot of them couldn't get there because they didn't have the transport. It was only to school and back. So now they're able to be brought to the EA networks as well. The new program that was set up, we have been lucky enough, fortunate enough that HOWS, the Healthy Active Learning program, is now Mid-Canterbury, has been running in Canterbury and other areas throughout New Zealand for 2 years. We're now second phase, but for us it's just commenced. We have Anna Holland, who is still but a primary school teacher at Ashburton Borough, taken on the role and has been very successful. 10 schools have been identified and are all committed to the program, and it has started, and it has been a really great way for that other connection for schools to be engaged. It was a program that was a contract between Sport New Zealand, Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education. It covers nutrition as well. From community organisations, we obviously there's a list there. What we're currently doing, it doesn't take into account the meetings that we attend and the support that we give to a lot of people. I guess one of the ones that has been really time consuming for staff has been meeting with groups, sports and public, with the issues and challenges we have currently at EA Network Centre. It is a challenge. We're trying to turn it into, you know, working together, but for me personally, it is huge. Because in the all, we all want a vibrant and thriving community. So our purpose with Ashburn District Council and Sport Canterbury, we want that, and we need to continue to work together to keep this positive relationship. And finishing off, the only area that I would like to ask is that in the future from Council, if there is a report template for us to now that you know and can identify what we actually do, or in a budget template, because we obviously are new and back to this game of presenting to you. Sean, have you got any comments?
No, just probably to add to it, and Jan touched on it, just I guess we're Sport Canterbury, but the scope of our work has really evolved significantly over the last 3 years in particular, like a real, I guess, broader lens on essentially, and it probably aligns quite well to the account's objectives around just getting people physically active in any which way, whether they're 5 or whether they're 95, and whether that's through play or active recreation, but essentially almost that whole landscape for us around, it used to be very numbers focused and members into clubs. Now it's just around actually if you do something, your wellbeing improves, and that's almost where our mindset is going as well. And probably just to probably add a little bit around the challenges at the moment with COVID, and we know it's particularly hard for sport groups and those trying to provide opportunities, but they have done a really good job, and you talked about resilience before, and they have been extremely resilient, and I mean, I remember 2 years ago as a region, I was really proud of the resilience that our community group showed to make opportunities occur, and those opportunities are, I guess, getting us to look at things a little bit differently. And I think with the government response to sport, there's been significant investment at that first stage on really just surviving, and we're now maybe going through that, and now we're into reactivating people. And then what will come in the future is probably more investment into making things different but better. So that's the continual involvement of where, I guess, sport and recreation will continue to head and accepting those challenges. But yeah, we're happy to take some questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we've got one here from Lynette.
Yes, just a concern I have with winter sports on the horizon, and we've got a lot of unvaccinated kids out there which will not be able to participate in rugby and close contact sports. Is there going to be a program or activities or anything, you know, have you thought about anything organised for this group of kids? Because there will be a lot out there, and you don't really, if they've been active until now, you don't really want them sort of going out in the sidelines, never to participate again.
Yeah, really good question. There's continuous work happening between Sport New Zealand and in particular the Ministry of Education around clarifying some of the guidance given to school, because you're right, the inter-school or the club sport scenario is going to be difficult under the current regulations. So they're cleaning that up to hopefully essentially allow a lot of physical activity for those students to take part in inside the school gate, because they're already in there in curriculum time. The addition to that is you're already seeing some of our sports from a national level driving down initiatives. So I'll just give rugby as an example. So while they've mandated 15-a-side rugby to be a vaccine passport, they're also going to set up hubs for 10-a-side and sevens opportunities on a regular basis, which will be more open to all to participate. So definitely the wellbeing of people, whether they're decided to be in the vaccine pass opportunity or not, is coming through in the sports decisions.
Thank you. I've just got a question, and it's just after the recent successes at the Winter Olympics, and I just wondered how much Sport Canterbury do you work with Snow Sport NZ? I mean, we've got a great mountain here, but everything seems to be based down south in either Wanaka or Queenstown. Is there any way that you would work with them? And I mean, a lot of children around the district do get the opportunity to ski or snowboard, and maybe just kind of nurture that into some upcoming Olympians going forward.
Well, I'll take full credit for Nico and Zoe, first of all. Yeah. Probably at the moment, not really. We do a little bit just around coordination of programs and I guess events so that everyone's on the same page with what's going on in the communities. But I guess it's largely driven by Snow Sports New Zealand. But I mean, we're always looking for opportunities to work with national partners. It just tends to vary.
I mean, it just seems a perfect opportunity that we all saw them 4 years ago when they were quite young, 16, and now both of them at 20 have walked away with gold medals. So just, yeah.
And I personally think too that our schools do help those students, for the schools that do go up the mountain, but often it is seen as the Cadrona is the one to go to, and it is about the parents and dollars. So that's the area that we have to look at as much as promotion. We have to be able to provide that. So skiing, we all know, is expensive, and there are opportunities, but it comes from that really balances better, that we would like to see that happen across areas like that. So the dollars do play a big impact on those sports as well.
No, I agree. With that, any further questions for either Jan or Sean? No, that's good. And template-wise, is that something that we can look on?
Yeah, I saw Steve making a note of that, so we'll reach out, Jan, and help in any way we can with the way in which you report.
We just want to make it as easy for councillors and yourself to read it. But my thought was, and it is a bit of a repeat of what I sent in September, but Dad decided to leave this world, so in the appropriate time, but I just felt it was a way of just introducing councillors that didn't know of our work to just see the wide scope that we do have.
Yeah, we want the same thing. We want to understand you better as well, so we'll work together on that.
Yeah, no, that's good. And earlier we heard from Leslie from Safer Communities, and she also mentioned the falls and balance stuff as well. So yeah, we've got a good idea. But thank you both for coming along. That's the end of our session. Thank you. I think we've got another workshop at 1 o'clock. Is that correct? So lunch between now. Thank you very much.